so-called flying saucers.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the SA. It's rotating.
Two stripes. Oh, I'm in trouble. Oh, that shot. Damn it! Oops, sorry guys, didn't see me there. Huh, I got it in. That doesn't really count the game, but let me just shoot the 8-ball. Ah, terrible. Missed. All right. Welcome to Kill the Stigma. So today I want to talk about best case scenario, worst case scenario of the ongoing situation that's going on with these mysterious drones. I know I keep talking about it, but I mean, guys, this is kind of very serious. It doesn't matter what the technology, whose it is, right? Whether it's Russian, Chinese, or non-human intelligence, because these things, they're just there and we can't do anything about it. There's hundreds of them, hundreds. So let's speculate that this continues and doesn't stop. Will they make a move eventually? What is their end goal? Or will they leave? If they leave, then we're good. If they don't leave, and it's the new thing, and they keep spreading over the United States, then what? Then what? Or not even just the United States, the whole world. Hundreds, all over. Now, yesterday I posted a video, and I shared a little bit of my experience, and right after that, my son needed his backpack for school. And I go to my ex's house and drop off the backpack, and I see this orb. And it's weird, I was literally thinking about crash retrievals because there was rumors of a crash in Jersey, and this little orb, far from the distance, I swear to God, these things are messing with me. I don't know, I might sound crazy, but they're just probably saying hi, just messing with me. This thing, boom, it's like gravity's gone, falls. Now, was that a crash retrieval? And there's no way. It's just like a little orb of light. But yeah, I saw that yesterday right after that episode. It's like, this is crazy, man. This is nuts. Like, but it wasn't hundreds of drones or whatever. It's just a little orb. It was a beautiful night. There was like no clouds in the sky. I wish I could have taken on video, but it was like very fleeting, super fast, like usual. That's how it usually goes. It's really hard to take videos of these things. Usually they're far away, and a lot of times they're very fast, and you just don't have time to do it. So what's going to happen if these things continue? Will they make a move? Will they get violent at some point? Will they just be in the sky? Because that's also disturbing and kind of creepy if you think about it. If our military can't do anything about this, which looks like they can't, or they would have, and they stay up there, that might cause, well, it's already causing kind of panic. And if it spreads across the United States, which we're not there yet, then that could also make it worse. And eventually, it could have an effect on, I don't know, say the stock market or something, right? Especially if something bad happens. Like, what happens to cattle, that sometimes happens to humans. I don't even want to say that word. I don't even want to talk about that. Or something like cholera, or people go missing. Something like that starts happening, which I hope that's not the case. Amen. That would be bad. Anyway, I've been thinking a lot about this, guys, because there's been a lot of rumors of something coming. And I don't want to ignore that. But I also don't want to fearmonger, and I don't know what to do right now, because yesterday I said fear is the enemy. I'm not scared of any child. I'm scared of humans, man. I feel like it's our response would be so important if this is actually happening. And remember, it doesn't really matter if it's any child or not. If it's an adversary, then we're still screwed. I mean, people's equipment ain't working. These things shut off as soon as they start getting, the helicopters approach them, they'll turn off their lights and you can't catch them anymore. Like, we can't do anything about it. So if they're Chinese or Russian, they might make a move and we might still be at war. And they have the capabilities to be inside of the United States and we can't do anything about it. So that was still very disturbing. Anyway, I'm going to show you some clips that make me a little bit nervous. Now, I kind of got the idea from this channel that's wonderful called Night Shift. This guy called Clint, he does a great job. And I basically, I was going to clip it from his channel, but it had music. I don't want to get hit with a copyright. So I kind of just found these clips and went from there. Anyway, let me show you.
If there is a time where our technology really, really gets us in a horrible situation.
There's certainly plenty of very serious thinkers who say that the human race is heading right towards extinction.
We have a current program that was a successor to the contest. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I'm going to jump us a little bit, because we started, at ground zero, at the foundation with the contest. And so I did it not because of my belief system, because I already have a belief system, mm-hmm. but I did it to see what kind of proof and evidence would be acquired. Mm-hmm. And so the challenge is of a different order of magnitude. The challenge is an effort to involve an acquisition of information from the other side that proves or disproves what information Bix already has from multiple kinds of sources as to the disposition of the human race in time coming. It's a pessimistic view that we have relative to the data that are telling us what we see. I'm hoping we're wrong, and but I'm hoping that the data are substantial in the way that we're trying to acquire it to tell us we're wrong, because we're going to do devil's advocacy on the data that's coming from the sources that we are out there trying to gather.
If I understand what you're saying, it's basically like the data that is coming into you from multiple sources leads you to have a pessimistic outlook on the future of humanity. Yeah. And you're looking for some way that we might be able to change that apparent destiny.
I don't think that's an achievable goal for me. Okay. I think I'm an explorer, a researcher, and I think that problem is gigantic. It's huge.
Because it's coming at us from many angles.
Yeah, it's probably already written on the wind one way or another, and it's going to happen. And there's little or nothing we can do about it. Part of that is a function of nobody's going to listen anyway, and so who are we talking to, right? So we'll know, maybe we'll have more information than the average person on the street is going to have, right? And maybe that will give us some ability to have some comfort in our thought process of thinking about not just our container has a clock ticking, but from normal biological disintegration or whatever, or an accident or something coming along, but from a standpoint that things are really going to be bad. And how do you prepare yourself for that and those that you love and care for, or friends? How do you prepare for any of that, right? So that's probably the best that we can do.
Well, you're talking about something, a huge topic most people can't begin to wrap their minds around, the potential extinction of our species. That's something very few people want to address at all.
Now, what do you guys make of that? Like, is he talking about, what sources are those? Like this, it might seem like Robert Bigelow went off his rocker, but this is a guy with a lot of resources. He's a billionaire. He's doing pretty well. And he's actually, if you ask me, he's been ahead of the curve here, right? So I don't know what that means if he's talking to the other side. He said the other side. But I would assume that he's trying to prove what these things say. And that he's probably already done that. And that's why he takes them seriously. Because otherwise he wouldn't be that spooked. But it's very wild and very woo. I understand that. But he did seem very disturbed. He says the problem is huge and there's no fixing it and there's nothing we can do about it because part of the problem is nobody will listen anyway. It's true. Nobody wants to hear this stuff, man, honestly. And the reason I'm talking about it is because of all this stuff, all these drones and all that, and the possibility that this might be actual, this might be the situation. Just the possibility. I just want to address it, guys. I don't want to be that guy who's scared to talk about negative stuff either. I'm gonna end this on a hopeful note, just so you know. But I wanted to touch on it. I'm not gonna ignore something. I'm not gonna pretend there's not an elephant in the room. That's just not me.
That I don't think we're going to be in any shape in a decade to be doing very much of anything. So I'm not hopeful for the future direction that we're moving in it.
And the future direction, climate-wise, AI-wise?
Climate-wise and geopolitical-wise, that's the thing I think is going to kind of come. I think things are going to be pretty difficult starting in a few years. And from what I've been told by sources.
What does that mean? It's going to be difficult?
I can't say specifically. I don't know that much yet, and I can't really say, but just that a lot of what we take for granted now in life, I don't think is going to be, we're not going to have it. A lot of things we have now that makes our lives as wonderful as they are.
Like electricity?
I don't know. Just the access to all the things we have access to now that are dependent on the globalization, basically, which just aren't sustainable. A lot of the things we have aren't sustainable. The populations are growing, and I think the climate issues are major as well. I mean, that's just my opinion, but I have studied quite a bit about the climate change problem, and I take it really seriously.
Is there something about the geopolitical situation? Because you just referenced population and climate change.
It's not that simple. I just don't feel qualified to talk about it, but I just don't think things as they are now are sustainable, and I'm not qualified to really talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm just concerned. That's all.
Yeah.
Advantage over China. It's probably a core reason, but I think there's probably other things motivating this as well. Maybe even good reasons in theory to keep it from the mass public until you have a plan to communicate it. And I look at certain things that Lou Elizondo has said that are, not assuring in that respect. And he said this a few times now, and every time people, uncomfortably gulp, and it's unclear how to react to it because it's so vague. But he titled his book Imminent. For one, that's the name of his book. He's been asked about like some future event or some, scenario that would present like a destabilizing effect on society in some way. What that is, he has not given any color, but you can look at a few examples of his comments where he's referring to, where he's answering questions about there's rumors of a future event. And he doesn't dismiss it by any means. He just says, I'm not approved to talk about that yet. And he's denied that, for example, just yesterday he was asked this question. This was Thursday. He was asked this question about like, is the event this asteroid that might do a flyby of Earth in 2027? And he goes, no, it has nothing to do with that. And then he goes, beyond that, I can't talk about it. I was like, so there actually is an it. I was like, so there's an it that you can't talk about that refers to some future event that potentially help, inform why you called your book Imminent. It's like, bro, like that's, I don't know. Like, I understand he has reasons. He has left and right bounds about what he can or cannot say. But I know for the people that pay attention to the UFO stuff, which some are very professional and some are minor, but some are not necessarily psychologically even keeled. That's like kerosene on the fire, man. That's like, holy shit. Like, what are you talking about? You talking about like an invasion? Are you talking about like, what are you talking about, bro?
What does your gut say?
So that is Matthew Pines. Matthew Pines is, he knows, he's got a lot of sources, I guarantee it. I think he runs a cybersecurity company, and he's, when it comes to national security, he knows a lot of people. So his sources are probably not just Luis Elizondo. He probably talks to other people. So that's why I posted this clip of him. He's probably heard that from multiple sources, but since Lou is a public figure, he probably used him. If I had to guess, I don't know. But yeah, he knows a lot more than what he's saying. Eminent. Now, Luis Elizondo gets a lot of flack, right? And I know for a fact that he's misled the public in the sense that he's lied for national security reasons. I'll give you one example. Stephen Greer, right? Stephen Greer, I don't want to get much into him, but he's one of those guys, how do I say this? He had a lot of information, and a lot of it was accurate and a lot of it was inaccurate, but he had very sensitive information that was accurate back in the day. So what do you do with those people? You send the CIA or something, some people, basically you disinform them, right? Because they're getting too close. I mean, we know that he was part of the Wilson memo briefing and all that, and he's got information about alien technology and ARVs. Those are real, guys. Those are real. When Luke comes, he basically didn't get into that at all. He basically just wanted to talk about the NHI. And there was a whole thing whether it's considered a threat. Greer thinks it's not a threat, that us humans are the only threat. Now, I disagree with. I do think there's negative NHI here. NHI means non-human intelligence, just if anybody new is listening, which is like the new word for aliens, because we can't prove they're from another planet unless they give us a tour to freaking wherever. We get a few samples, send a few astronauts. So they're not telling us that, so we're using non-human intelligence. Now, Greer was wrong about that, but he was right about the ARVs and the alien tech and a breakaway civilization. And then Nancy Mace asked Lou if it could have been our technology or if it's just NHI, and he said it's probably both. So he admitted it after years of just stirring away from that. Why? Because he probably didn't want to, he wanted to protect classified information. If I had to guess, he wanted to protect what's our technology for national security, but he was legitimately concerned about whatever, about UAP and the ones that are not us. I will say the breakaway civilization is also a threat, though, 100%. Anyway, let's see what Lou has to say.
Lou, what do you believe to be the primary reason?
Look, Kurt,
For lack of transparency.
Yeah, I'm a little more practical and probably a little bit more less optimistic for our species on this particular question. What if there was knowledge, Kurt, that was so volatile, so earth-shattering, that the mere knowledge of that getting out could predicate an action that could potentially threaten the entire species? Now, what do I mean by that? For just a moment, take off the scientific hat, take off your humanitarian hat, take off your philanthropic hat, and put on a hat of national security. We just talked about the fact that there's no indication that these things have been here to help us. Okay, so there's really only three possibilities: they're benign, or if you will, benevolent, or two, they are malevolent, they're here to hurt us, or three, they're just here to observe us, and they're capable of doing both good and bad like us. Well, if you were to put on your national security hat for a second, let's say you're a general from the 1950s or 60s, and your job is to protect America and all things good and great, and the height of the Cold War, and you've got the Soviet bear across there, and things are pretty tough, right? And nuclear proliferation is a real thing. Now, you have information that there is something here that can outperform anything you have, and really anything you have is rather ineffective from a national security perspective. And there's a thing out there, and it doesn't show that it's being benevolent. So it's only one of two other options: either malevolent or it's like us. And we see this very careful ISR surveillance of our nuclear equities. It's interested in nuclear equities. Well, some may look at that as what we call preparation for the battlefield. Okay. And let's just say hypothetically, there's a 10% chance, US has a 10% chance that these things are bad, or one day they're going to come here in force, and they're looking at us, right? Remember, you're putting on your national security hat. So forget about everything else for a moment. Your job is to be paranoid. And there's a small remote chance that these things are not good. And maybe there is a plan for these things at some point to come in force in 50 years from now. And if the mere fact you have this conversation with the American people, what's going to happen? Well, the American people are going to start getting prepared. Well, I can tell you in real life combat situations, when we send in long range surveillance LRS teams, behind enemy lines, the moment the enemy finds out that we know, that they know we're there, the element of surprise is over. And so ultimately, hypothetically, imagine a scenario where maybe we had 50 years to prepare for something, but now that the cat's out of the bag, that existential action will happen tomorrow. And by the way, we're not ready for it. We're not prepared for it. We don't have a countermeasure. We don't have a capability to counter this. And so from a very real perspective, a national security perspective, the mere fact that you are acknowledging the existence of something may predicate an action or an act that you're not prepared to have right now. And so I encourage you and your listeners to just for a moment, I'm not asking you to be a national security person, but I'm asking you to suspend your personal beliefs right now for just a moment and put yourself in somebody else's shoes who does feel that way, right? Now, what do? If the mere fact of talking about this could potentially cause a reaction that you're not ready for as a country, as a civilization, right? Maybe that's the reason why you decide to only brief certain presidents who have a background in intelligence. Maybe they were former directors of CIA, but the other presidents who are career politicians will be, they're here today, gone in 4 years. Maybe you can't even risk telling them. And so maybe the reason why this has been kept secret so long is actually, in a weird sense, some sort of sense of patriotism by people. And maybe that's how they justify it. And I'll leave that at that as a counterpoint of forcing people to think maybe a little bit non-traditionally. Now, do I think if that happened to ever be the case, that's a good explanation? No. I still think that we have to be honest with the American people. It's like I've said this before, it's like going to the doctor. Just because I have cancer, it's bad news. Don't keep that from me. I want to know, because maybe there's a chance I can do something about it, right? And so, but do I understand that mentality? Sure, nobody wants to give anybody bad news. Now, am I saying that's the case? No, I'm not. It's just you asked me one of the reasons why people would want to keep this secret. Well, that's a really damn good reason why people may want to keep this secret, because the mere fact of not keeping it secret could cause a reaction that you're not ready for yet. There's nothing you can do. You don't have a countermeasure. So again, from a national security perspective, that makes sense. Again, I don't agree with it, but that's understandable.
What should I do then, as someone who?
That's the wrong question to ask. Sean can give you advice on that. I can't tell you what to do.
Yeah.
That's my problem. When we go down this rabbit hole, people want to know what should they do about it. That's not for me to answer. That's for you to answer yourself. I can't tell you what to do about it. I can't tell you I can give you look, you've been diagnosed with cancer. You should get treatment. But how you get that treatment and who you get it from and how you decide to do it, that's on you, brother. That's not me. I can't, and it would be overstepping my bounds to even begin. This is where people go wrong in this whole area of ufology and UFOs, because they want, well, what do I do about it? And people are really quick to tell, this is what you should do. You should subscribe and you should give me money and I'll teach you how to do this. That's horseshit. No, you figure that shit out. That's you. Don't ask me, because I'm not smart enough to tell you what's in your best interest. Only you can make that decision. I'm smart enough to tell me what's in my best interest, but I can't tell you what's in your best interest, and I won't. And that's overstepping my bound. You want to know what my number one advice is, and I'm going to let Sean explain this because Sean does a better job than I do. But when people say, they ask me, what's the first thing I should do? And this is going to sound a little crazy, but you know what? I'm going to let Sean explain it because I think he definitely gets it. My one word of advice is turn to your children, turn to your loved ones, and love them. Invest in your relationship with your loved ones and your friends. Start with that. And people get mad. It's like, well, what the hell does that have to do with the topic of UAPs and anything else? This has everything to do with it. Because if you don't stop to do that and realize what's really important in life, then everything else is irrelevant.
National security. And I know you're here to interview me, but let me interview you just for a moment, if I may, if you'll indulge me. How do we? This is a sandbox here, right? Let's say there's a technology now. There's a toy that there's 12 kids in the sandbox, but there's only one toy, right? This toy has the ability to let everybody play together and be nice. The problem is human nature is such that most kids, most governments in this case, using it as an analogy, are going to want that toy for themselves. How do we share the toy? How do we use this? Because we know there's countries out there that if they had a certain type of technology, they would probably employ it very quickly to their advantage. And I'm not saying we have never done it, because we have. I mean, we dropped the bomb. We did. We're the only country that's ever dropped a nuke, an atom bomb. And that was us, so we'd like to say, we're afraid of it. Well, don't look now, but we were the ones who did it. For good or bad or indifferent, right? That's a fact, established fact. So countries will use technology if they feel that they have to in a time of conflict. With this type of technology, if we were to come together and say, look, we really can do better as humanity. We don't have to fight each other, right? Now, this is on the backdrop right now of Hamas and Israel, Ukraine and Russia, right? We have issues in Africa. We have issues right now with China and the South China Sea and Taiwan and the U.S. And the world is on fire. Doesn't matter what side of the argument you're on. I think we can all agree that the world is a very dangerous and violent place right now, right? This technology has the chance to either bring us together or completely rip us apart once and for all. Right? Like there's no coming back. How do you solve that problem?
It's a very hard problem to solve, but it's only the hardest problem to ever. You have to raise people's consciousness in step with slow dissemination of the thing or something. But
how do you stop that temptation? Because all it takes is one selfish kid to ruin it for the rest. Remember, one kid. It's my toy.
Probably just show them the good ways in which this technology could be used before you even just tell them that it exists.
Who does that? Who's going to take the moral high road and say, I give to you this technology and you shall use it for peaceful means? Who has that moral authority? Who's trusted enough in the world to do that and to say, you will use it for this but not for that? Who?
I think it's probably going to be just a collective move and something that is like an emergent property of a lot of good people with good minds and good hearts coming together to.
Who is that? The United Nations?
I think it's
Is it society writ large?
Well, this maybe the NHI, maybe the entities themselves. I mean, we were with James Fox the other week in Austin, great guy, and I was talking to him, and he was like, I'm making all these documentaries, and the thing that has come up after decades of doing research on the UFO subject, whenever I'm about to find smoking gun proof of UFOs, I have, a video here, a picture here, an amazing eyewitness, the thing disappears. There's some like ephemeral, bizarre thing about that. And then if we're talking about the nuclear connection as well, it's almost like there is a counter intel on the part of the NHI themselves, where it's like mass surveillance, and it is there right when it needs to be there, and things will disappear. And it's our most precious assets. It's our nuclear assets. They'll get by our most intense encryption from the NSA. And so my answer to that would be like, it's like the three-body problem. They know we're going to blow ourselves up, so they clamp down on the science, and they're responsible for a lot of the productive science.
Would humanity be okay with an overlord, an NHI babysitter? Is that freedom? Are you really free then if an NHI were to come down and say, okay, folks, this is a reality, ha ha ha, we've been kind of playing with you a little bit, but here's reality. You're all going to play well with each other. You're all going to be able to enjoy this free energy and whatnot, but you're going to play by our rules. Now what happens? Now what happens to free will? At that point, humanity is faced with the reality, potentially, that we're not the alpha species, right? And now that we have to do what something or someone else tells us to do. Is that free manifestation? Is that the ability for us to live our lives the way we want to live our lives, or the way we are told to live our lives?
But isn't that already happening in some version of reality, with people believing that end of the world is upon us and Armageddon?
Yeah, look, governments do it all the time. Look, we've been told what to do all the time by governments and religion and institutions, organizations, social clubs. Absolutely, PTAs. I mean, I can't tell you how many societies are out there that tell you how to live your life. Well, I mean, look, and they're not all bad, but we're in a place right now that has specific rules on how one should live their life.
So will we be okay with an alien overlord? What does that even mean? Does that mean that we made a deal at some point and they're going to interview because things are getting too out of control? Is that true freedom? Was Arthur C. Clarke right about the space monolith and his book about Childhood's End, and how this, literally he describes everything that Elizondo said there, pretty much. I think Arthur C. Clarke was definitely getting downloads. I did see a documentary on him about his interest in the UFOs, and it was like very secret. He was kind of in the closet about it, but he was fascinated by them. In fact, I don't know if they mentioned the Invisible College. I'm not sure. I don't know. Somebody ask Jacques Vallée about Arthur C. Clarke if they know them, please. Thank you. Anyway, guys, everything's going to be all right. I just had to get this out of my system. It was therapeutic. Thank you. Goodbye.